without the coffee. Ideas a talk teaching kindness in education, organized by Ideas International. Now, Ideas International is cited as the most affordable international school in Kuala Lumpur, fully licensed for students aged 11 years till 17 years old. They, of course, employ passionate, qualified, and experienced teachers with an excellent IGCSE exam track record. And where I'm at today is the newly renovated, very cool campus at my town in Kuala Lumpur. And there's a brand new campus in Penang as well. Now, both campuses offer expanded subjects like AI and STEM. So if you're keen to visit Ideas International, either campus, do book a tour or even experience a day at school, you can log on to the website www.ideasinternational.org.my. Now, a quick introduction. Ideas International also practices diversity, unity, inclusiveness with a humanity amplified approach. That is, that there's focus on developing students' identity to unlock human potential. And this is where our topic comes in today and why this topic is so apt, because it's a conversation that not just feels timely and necessary, but one that is profoundly human. And we're here to explore a question that is reshaping education, not just here in Malaysia or Asia, but worldwide. How does kindness shape a student's future? And why does it matter more today than ever? The world children are growing up in has changed dramatically. We're witnessing rising levels of anxiety among students, growing social pressures amplified by digital platforms, and a global landscape that demands not just intelligence, but also empathy, resilience, and emotional maturity. And this is exactly why Ideas International Secondary School in Kuala Lumpur is leading this important conversation. The school doesn't just view kindness as a soft skill or a seasonal theme or a weekly subject. It treats kindness as a strategic competency, one that strengthens learning by shaping identity, nurturing leadership, and preparing young minds for a world where collaboration and compassion matter as much as academic achievement, all for the global citizen. So whether you're a parent joining us today, an educator, a student, or simply someone who cares about the future of young people, we thank you for joining us and we invite you to lean in, reflect, and be part of this conversation. We look forward to your questions as well. Do leave them in the comments section and we hope to take them towards the end of the hour. We're joined by an exceptional panel of thinkers and leaders who spend their careers shaping education, values, and young minds across Malaysia and around the world. Firstly, Yang Mulia Tunku Zain Al Abidin, the founding president of Ideas and co-founder of this school, as well as Dr. Sharifah Maimunah Zain, former director of co-curriculum development at the Ministry of Education, Malaysia, and a former UNESCO permanent delegate. Welcome and thanks for being with me today. But joining us virtually as well is Professor Jason Pandya-Woods, Dean at Western Sydney University and author of The Kindness Fix. Welcome to you, Professor, as well. And truly it's exciting to be seated with all of you here as we explore this topic today. Panelists, let me begin with this question. In a world where young people are growing up with global conflicts, there's cultural tension, there's migration and identity shift issues, as well as exposure to social media, is kindness now a global competency rather than a personal virtue? I mean, what does kindness look like for the modern global young citizen? And why does it matter now more than ever? Prof, let me start with you.
Thank you so much, Jessy, and Selamat Petang. Look, it's such a salient topic, and what an interesting way to open this up. The world we are in at the moment can sometimes feel out of control. There's so much that certainly makes me feel quite gloomy and depressed when I look at the news, or I look at some of the enduring social problems and challenges we face across the world. Right now, there's around about 110 armed conflicts. Some of these have been going on for many, many years. Some are much more recent. Kids today will be engaging with social media that exposes them to all kinds of anxieties and concerns about their place in the world and so on. And it seems like, certainly for the last 30 to 40 years, we've been taught, wrongly I believe, that selfishness is in our best interest, that if we pursue our own agendas at the expense of others, we're likely to succeed in life. Well, guess what? The history tells us otherwise. If you go back millions of years, you'll see that cooperation, collaboration, kindness, and for me, the most important word, compassion, have been critical to our development. They've helped us in our kind of origins of a species to build societies by working together, by leaning on each other, by developing those social skills that are absolutely essential to human evolution. So if we look at the world today and we're thinking about how do we respond to the biggest social, political, moral, economic, environmental challenges, for me, the only way to do that is by working together. The only way to work together is to truly begin to understand one another. And that requires compassion, it requires a kindness, and it requires an ability to trust and build those relationships with each other.
Right, I'm bringing that question to our panelists here in our studio or on the school campus today. Who would like to take that question first? Perhaps, Dato, you would like to start with that. Why does it matter now more than ever? And through your experience, has there been sort of a compromise on kindness?
Thank you very much for inviting me to be on this panel. I think looking at what's happening now, and this is really a timely, this time to talk about kindness because of the things that's happening around us. You see a displaced person, conflicts, natural disasters, all need feelings of compassion among our students, particularly because it is in the school that you try to infuse these feelings. So I think it's very timely for this discussion to take place. Yeah.
Tunku.
I think I echo everything that's been said. I think in addition to the very important word that's been mentioned, compassion, and especially in a educational setting, is understanding, right? I mean, appreciating that people have had very different experiences and that one needs to be compassionate, but I think also to understand root causes as well. Why is it that people have had very different experiences? How is it that, I mean, in the context of our school, right? How is it that people have come here, right? And I think that having that understanding, and a lot of that, of course, is outside the classroom, right? The interpersonal relationships that the kids ultimately, naturally, organically have, sort of will lead to better understanding. And I think that's such a strong foundation for the compassion that we also want to build.
Right. So it's not just in theory, it needs to be lived and breathe in our daily interaction. But I'll keep you there. Now, in Malaysia's sort of society where it's quite diverse as well, can teaching kindness help to strengthen national identity and how we interact socially? I mean, how does kindness contribute to raising students who are not just academically capable, but then who are also responsible civically?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question. I mean, at the foundation, at the beginning of our nation, right, Federation of Malaya and then Malaysia, different vocabulary was used, but I think some of the same concerns were raised, right? We, even without talking about, the later trends of conflict in Southeast Asia and economic migration and refugees. I mean, even before all that, we all internally, we were a multiracial, multicultural, multi-ethnic society, and I think early leaders did try and answer these questions and expressed the answers through policy. Unfortunately, I think in some cases the policies gone wayward, and it being politics, once things are sort of institutionalized, very hard to reform. And
you bring up a really interesting point. I'll let you finish.
Well, I think that's why I'm so excited to be part of Ideas International, right?
Yes.
Because here we have an opportunity to show that it is possible to have a different way forward. It is possible to foster kindness, compassion, inclusion, and hopefully that can influence wider public policy as well. And if I may just very briefly add, I mean, the genesis of this school emerged out of public policy research, and ultimately, in the grander scheme of things, it's public policy that we want to influence.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's great to be here and sort of circle the square.
Right. Well, thank you for weighing in that way. Prof, would you like to add on?
No, I was just going to say that's beautifully put. And the thing about any human characteristic, right? Anything you want to see nurture and nourish and develop is it can't be left to chance. It can't be left to happenstance. There are some innate human qualities we have, but they need environments to nurture them. We're very, very plastic people. We can be shaped and molded and developed in accordance with what's around us. Now, if we have politicians, educators, leaders, people with power constantly telling us a certain message about who we're supposed to be as humans, if that's a negative message and it's reinforced by all of how we teach, how we work and so on, that's going to create a particular version of the human story. Whereas actually what Ideas International School is showing, that if you weave in to this school, if you make it part of the mission of the school, that teachers, the curriculum, all embody kind of aspects of compassion and kindness and help to build that understanding that Tunku spoke about, that will lead to a much more positive change, and you can begin to see that ripple through. The final point I'd make on that, and this connects really importantly to the policy making, that we need to be able to build the evidence to show this thing works, because policymakers need to see that transformation to get behind it. And this, I hope, is an amazing case study of how to do it.
Right, and so we take all points, and lay that out on the table. I think the question that emerges, especially for a parent, is that what does it take to integrate Dato kindness meaningfully into syllabus, into an educational framework? Can it be assessed? Should it be assessed?
Well, I think to kindness has to be instilled, and it cannot be like to be told this is what kindness is. And I think it must be integrated as part and parcel of teaching and learning. And every teacher must have that responsibility, and it should not be isolated from learning in the classroom, because even in the activities, children can interact with each other and at the same time be kind to one another. And I think that's, in fact, in the Malaysian context, the philosophy of the national philosophy application, we have what we call one of the objectives is to have a balanced individual, spiritually, intellectually, physically, and emotionally. So in that, in that kind of aspiration, all the values come in, and it is not isolated from activities in the classroom.
So what I hear is that an education system in its essence has to be wholesome.
Yes.
But is the system itself kind? Is it kind enough to promote then these sort of values and bring them up to the surface, i.e. to prioritize kindness?
Is the system kind enough? That's tough. That's really tough. I think it's sort of what's the word? Symbiotic, right? We're trying to make the system.
But the question is, are we expecting children to be kind in an ecosystem that is not equally kind to them? There's social pressures, there's exams, there's assessments, punishment, streaming.
There's a briefing here, I think, which tells me that. But I think I would be hesitant to have a firm reply, because I think the reality is you want to give children a safe space, right? So that they can, so that, as you know, as Dato says, as our professor says, that we can instill these things in the proper way, in the proper environment. At the same time, I think there are two risks, right? Number one is you also need, as children grow up, need to have them understand that the real world isn't necessarily like this, and that you need to be prepared, right? You need to be prepared for people who are unkind. But I think there are better ways that we can teach young adults, especially, to respond to unkindness in a better way that doesn't perpetuate the cycle of unkindness. And the second risk, I think, is also this idea that there should be a monopoly of what constitutes kindness. I mean, especially in Malaysia, right? What I noticed is that actually kids are much more likely to be kind to one another than adults, right? I mean, you go to our parliament and you can see that, right? So there's something important there, right? There's something innate, perhaps, in the way that children interact with each other that is more pure, more innocent. And actually, it's adults who sometimes have built up biases and prejudices that sort of make them not the best arbiters of what kindness is. So it's really, really difficult, right? I think the important thing is, when educators and policymakers think about how to inculcate and foster kindness, to bear these weaknesses into account, I suppose. And that's the start. Right.
And I come to you, Prof, at this point, on that note as well, your book, The Kindness Fix, that frames kindness as something that is teachable and something that you can measure. What does neuroscience tell us about kindness? And why should now schools like Ideas International treat kindness as an educational strategy, as a selling point rather than just a soft skill?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what I would distinguish between at the outset, and it's quite important, is what I would call the difference between kindness and compassion. Now, kindness is really, really important, but we tend to talk about kindness when we think about people we like. And that's really important. You know, we're kind to people who are like us or people we like. That can be quite limiting because, as Tunku just said, we go into the world and we spend a great deal of our time interacting with people who may not be in our very close family or our friendship groups. What compassion provides us, and one element of compassion is definitely kindness, it provides us with the skills to understand, firstly, the human experience in all its diversity, and included within that, suffering. The idea that people can be experiencing pain or difficulty or challenge. And by being open to that and understanding that and accepting that as part of the human condition, that begins to build empathy. And empathy is where we can understand each other better. Now, it requires teaching. It requires us to work with people to enable them to think about how to develop that empathy. Now, when we're kids, there's a bit of empathy that happens quite naturally. And this is mirroring. It's the thing that anybody who's a parent, and there are parents on this call, will know, that as soon as you smile at a baby in this way, and I'm doing it to you now, panel, and I'm looking for smiles in return, and here they come. And that's that sort of mirroring thing that happens where, if you look at human evolution, our social learning and our ability to mirror off one another was the invitation for us to collaborate, the invitation for us to bond and build a way of working together and prospering together. And it's really important in kids and parent relationships because, of course, that helps people to nurture, and it helps towards, in evolution, survival. But then we move beyond empathy to also needing to teach people what to do when they're confronted with situations where they could lean in and help. Compassion is a very active behavioral thing. It's not just about a feeling or something like pity or sympathy. It requires us to lean in and do some hard work. Now, here's the good news, that if we do all of those things, there are loads of benefits. Individually, there are benefits in terms of our brains, our emotions, the ways in which the wiring in our brains works and builds those pro-social things that we'd expect to see in brain chemistry, in how our neurosystem works. And that then connects us better to human beings and enables us to be pro-social. But there are also really important benefits for the wider community, because actually, if we build more trusting relationships, that's likely to lead to much less conflict and tension, particularly across groups where there's difference. So in really simple terms, these are teachable things because they help to build the sorts of societies that lead to much more collaborative, much less distrusting, much more free from conflict. By building those connections, and starting at school would be the most logical place to do it.
Right. But research also shows that kindness is deeply learned by examples, through parents and educators, and as you pointed out, Prof, in a school setting. How do schools, Dato, and parents work together, given your vast experience in the education line and having dealt with syllabus and more on? How can we bring these the element of school and parents to come together, work through family cultures, Tunku, as you pointed out, our diverse backgrounds as well, stress levels, exams, when all of these are points that really can make a difference to the example of what kindness would mean to me versus you, or you could be different as well. So how do we bring these stakeholders or the players to the table? I.e. also, what role should parents be realistically playing in promoting kindness?
I think parents must play a role in the activities of the children in school. And I think most schools would want to do that, but sometimes parents have got their own constraints, and they come just probably, but hardly in the kind of activities which can promote, the good relationship between the parents and the school. So that is actually something that schools will have to deal with, and at the same time, parents must be given that responsibility, that they must be involved in the children's activities and support the school. For example, in several co-curricular activities, there's a lot of interactions going on, and I think elements of kindness can be
infused,
yeah. And but sometimes, as I said, parents have their constraints, so sometimes it's always left to the teachers to carry out the activities themselves. So in that sense, I think there is perhaps more effort should be made to bring these two stakeholders closer.
Well, just for the benefit of our viewers and listeners and ideas, parents' involvement or the parent equation is important because of various support programs that are ongoing, such as the Humankind Partner, as well as awareness programs and human skills modules that encourage parent involvement despite time constraints, as well as for parents to understand the purpose and how they can take this module and practice it at home as well. Then we'll come to you, and I welcome our speakers to jump into the conversation as well. Does kindness make a weak leader? Perhaps there's this presumption that by being kind, you're being too soft, and therefore you will not be able to be a good leader. Perhaps you could set that record straight for us.
Yeah, it's actually rubbish. And I think if you look at the world today, I think, look, there are certain leaders in the world today who certainly want that to be, to try and make that argument. Oh, you need to be a strong person, you need to be an authoritarian, you need to be, a dictator to be strong and decisive. Look, I think history shows us that actually history often does not judge such people well. I think history judges leaders who are kind, who are compassionate. And look, politicians are always going to have some element of compromise, some element of, failure somewhere. But I think, look, I don't want to get into Malaysian politics, but let's
That's a whole other edition.
but I would say that this year we lost a prime minister, late Prime Minister Abdullah Badawi, and I think one of the things that came up again and again in the obituaries is that he was kind. He was a kind leader, and I think to many people in Malaysian civil society, it was that approach and that attitude which enabled actually quite an important evolution in Malaysian democracy and subsequently in public policy making. So perhaps some other Malaysian prime ministers would not receive the same warmth in memory because they didn't exhibit the same kindness and compassion, willingness to understand, different communities and different needs in society.
Right. And that obviously is also quite closely related to patience and understanding and having those channels of communication open both ways, which brings me to the topic of social media and the digital battlefield. That, of course, is high on the list of discussion for parents as well as, stakeholders coming together again to discuss whether social media is in fact a boon or bane for students. With algorithms now rewarding outrage and governments tightening the policies and controls, can social media, or has it weakened kindness for that outreach approach for being able to resonate through its different reels, or has it simply revealed what we as a society are gravely lacking, kindness?
Yeah, I do think it's a really good point. And I think that things interlock and they all, I think there's a lot of mythology around every bit of this, right? So if you look at leadership, as we just heard, there's the strongman leader, the idea of somebody being strong and tough, and we all get behind that person. And as Tunku says, history shows that what that inevitably leads to often is periods of great failure. And it's the longer term strategies around kindness, compassion that you look for. If you turn to social media is a really big catch-all phrase for all kinds of different interactions and algorithms and ways of being, that on the one hand, it can be very harmful, but on the other, it can also mobilize compassion. It can also mobilize people's exposure to different perspectives, different ways of thinking about the world. The task for us as educators, parents, communities who want to raise children is to enable them to think critically about these things, to engage with them, to understand how stories come together, how media is formed, how leaders lead, and what the impact of that is. And I think if we see that, then social media has a place in our society for us to interrogate.
Well, now I flip that. Can we use digital literacy in the way that we teach children to reach out to people that they meet physically and that they don't meet online, or perhaps people they have not met across the globe? Do we need to teach digital kindness so that it doesn't just matter to the person next to you, but goes beyond that? That's all.
What digital kindness means? What?
Perhaps kindness on online. We see a lot of bullying that goes on as well.
It's a possibility that we can try. I think the digital connectivity will enable them to go and not to go to a sort of view the situation much as though that person is there. And I think that will help promote better understanding of the suffering of the other person.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you have a catastrophe somewhere, and you do that, and the suffering, I think that can help promote the kindness that we are talking about among those who watch these programs. So I
Right.
think it's there is potential in promoting that.
I see you thinking. What are your thoughts?
Because it is an emerging thing. I know that Australia has just passed a law, right, to ban social media.
Malaysia's looking
But-
closely as well.
And
It's
on the other
furious.
hand, but on the other hand, I've interacted with many young people who benefit so much from having social media access and collaborating with people, as you say, right, understanding other people's situation through the medium, through social media. So look, I'm not a parent. I have no idea, right? I'm not qualified. But I would observe that there's a spectrum of solutions out there. And I think ultimately, it really depends on the child and the parents' knowledge of how ready a child may be, right? And I'm sorry, I'm, on the one hand, you can be scared of government overreach. On the other hand, you can worry about parents not being equipped to make the right decisions either. So it's really emerging. I think this is one of the challenges of our time, right? How the next generation will, will proceed.
We'll navigate this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I open this question to all our panelists today. If you could redesign education with kindness at its center, what are some of your non-negotiable pillars? Perhaps, Tunku, I can start with you since you're already on the go.
Well, I think as much as possible, right? Make the school environment reflective of the society in which these children are going to grow up, right? Now, of course, I understand that sometimes that's not just possible. Geographically, demographically, it may not be possible. But I've seen over and over again the power of that early intervention is always so important in education. But in this case, that early understanding that people are different and people have grown up in different environments. People come from different environments. People worship differently. They speak differently. They eat different things. I think once this is normalized in a child, that the benefits in adulthood are exponential. So that's my non-negotiable thing, right? As much as possible, diversify and maximize inclusion in the school setting.
And that's what we see here at Ideas International as well. In fact, don't know if you could see without the camera, the school practices a no-shoe policy, and that is to give it a more wholesome, more homely feel, whether you're at the library or in the coding room or in the hall downstairs. So we'd like to encourage parents and students interested to come to the campus to visit Ideas International, either in Kuala Lumpur or in Penang, to explore Ideas syllabus and its offerings for you. Dato, I come to you now, again with someone who has been directly involved with the Ministry of Education. If you could redesign education with focus on kindness, how would that look like, and what again are your non-negotiables?
I think as far as policies are concerned, it's already in place in the philosophy education. In fact, the government, in our, I think from the 6th Malaysia Plan, we already have this development of, in order to become developed, you must overcome several challenges, and one of it is challenge of develop a caring society. So already the things are there. It's just that at the school level, where children, it is very important, every teacher must take it as their responsibility to ensure that values like kindness is practiced in schools.
Right, I'm going to keep you there while I take a question coming from our audience member now, and she asks, what is the process of integrating kindness into the school culture as a whole school approach based in public schools? What's the best way to propose to school leadership as a teacher? So a teacher wants to promote that towards the school leadership, i.e. the principal and so on. We'd like to start with this answer. Please weigh in, speakers as well.
Sorry. I think at the school level, it must be integrated. As I said earlier, that every teacher is responsible for promoting values, all the good values, And one of the ways actually is when you have co-curricular activities, for example, uniform bodies. Uniform bodies like the Girl Guides, they already, one of the, among the principles is just to help others, be kind, to be courteous. So I'm not sure of other activities, but these are uh, co-curricular activities that has defined definitely about carrying out kindness among the children. Yeah.
Prof, we'd like to weigh in as well with the answer to this question
it's a
or
great-
your insight.
No, it's a great question, Kimberly. Thanks for posing it, because I think we've heard some of the responses so far. If you walk around Ideas International and you look around, see what messages are on the walls, see what books are available, see how we walk around with no shoes there, right? These are the hallmarks of how you integrate into the design of a building and the place, that environment that stimulates a desire to be and to demonstrate kindness and compassion. To take the point about our expectation on teachers, I think that's absolutely right. And I would go one step further, which is I would want all teachers to be trained in compassion, to understand why it matters, why it's important, and how it can be integrated into the everyday practice of teaching. It doesn't necessarily mean having class sessions once a fortnight on kindness. What it means is your everyday interactions with young people in the school environment being shaped by those principles.
I want to come now to the conversation on mental health. Is kindness the antidote to the mental health crisis that we see among students, among youth today?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of evidence to show that the more that compassion and kindness are shown to individuals, the more that they develop their own self-compassion and self-kindness. And this is really important factors in resilience. Resilience is what helps you to ward off the risk posed by mental health challenges. So if, in basic terms, if we give compassion and kindness, people will in turn then look after themselves and know how to seek support when they need it.
Right, Tunku, I'm going to pick your brain a little bit here. What is in today's context, when we speak about education and leadership, what are the blind spots? What are we missing?
We don't know what we don't know. I think one really important point for me to add to what Dato and Professor was saying and answer to Kimberly. I mean, I have nothing. I agree with everything that they said, but I think you have to face reality, right? In the Malaysian context, when you're talking about public schools, is that a lot of the decision making is still very centralized in the Ministry of Education, right? And I think that's going to be a challenge, right? How do we? I mean, on the one hand, it's a really tough thing to do, but on the other hand, it's an opportunity. If we manage to get a good reform in, it can apply everywhere quite quickly, right? Mm-hmm. But working one-on-one with schools, I think, as anyone who's worked with Malaysian public schools will know, it's extraordinarily tough even to introduce a pilot program for anything, right? Let alone something which like this, which is, as we've been talking about the whole session, has many elements to it. To answer your question, what are the blind spots? I think I think my answer would be we need to mitigate the blind spots as much as possible by always listening, always ourselves collaborating with other educational institutions who have the same broad agenda, and learning from each other, and of course so that the broad listening, but also the very focused, intent local listening, right? Understanding the individual and particular problems that people in this community have, right, and that these families have. I think there will always be blind spots, but you'll never know what they are 100%. But you can always remind yourself to always listen and to always be compassionate yourself.
Absolutely. So infusing kindness and the practice of kindness, even if it's in baby steps or micro-dosing, as they say these days, is something that can be practiced. Professor, I want to come to your research, and your research has shown that kindness and social emotional learning or social emotional learning cell can improve academic performance. We've discussed mental health as well, and long-term life outcomes. So not just for the phase where student is a student, but then later on as well. What would you say is the most misunderstood insight about kindness from a scientific or neuroscientific standpoint?
Yeah, I think, well, before we even get to that, one of the most misunderstood things about it is it's claimed to be soft, right? Soft and compassionate is weak, and it's limp and all of those things. It is completely the opposite. Actually, it requires great strength, courage. It requires determination to demonstrate compassion. Think of every time you've almost lost your rag at something that's made you upset. Compassion teaches us to try and understand situations in a much more nuanced, sophisticated way. And that's a great human skill to develop. And that requires, as I said, strength and courage. Now, in terms of the later on outcomes, the biggest killer, outnumbering all kinds of other factors around cancer, around smoking, around alcohol, is social isolation. Individuals being disconnected from one another, and as they get older, finding themselves on their own and disconnected from wider society. This is one of the biggest concerns we have right now in terms of later life outcomes. And it's been shown right throughout the research that the more that we build compassion, the more we build connections. The more that connections are in place, the more we reduce the risk of isolation. And that's just one example of a sort of longer term health consequence that can be addressed by building more connections and compassion and starting that at school. But I'd also just say there are economic benefits for us to gain from this as well. Lots of the social problems we face in society, whether it's in matters of crime and justice, whether it's in terms of supporting families in poverty and so on, these aren't addressed effectively by our current systems. If we rely too heavily on, for example, punishment methods, all we end up doing is making problems often a lot worse. Whereas actually, if we adopt compassionate approaches, and I'm not plugging my book, but there are some examples in there that show how you can save money, you can save wasted human effort on supporting people through systems in a much more proactive way by demonstrating compassion. So there's all kinds of longer term benefits, but at the very start, we've just got to do away with the myth that it's somehow soft or weak to be compassionate and kind.
We've got a question coming in from Sanchita, and she asks, could you give an example of how the school implements kindness framework in the daily classroom routine besides activities or co-curricular activities? I'll need to jump in here, Sanchita, to say in the interest of time, I won't be able to share exactly, but we hope that you're able to contact us via our WhatsApp number. We'll be able to give you more information, or if you have the time to come down here to visit. But very quickly at Ideas, there is a pro-social practice with a lot of role play in terms of consent, boundaries, and conflict resolution. There's also our partner programs that we carry out with Culture Impact, where there are awareness programs with events like the Exchange Theatre for students and for the school team as well. There's also Humankind, where there are regular self-reflection workshops that happen on an ongoing basis with the team as well. And furthering that, there's also cross-cultural projects, refugee narratives, to embrace and share stories of each of the students and their background, which is really important to the core mission of Ideas, as well as structured perspective-taking exercises in many of the modules that have an empathy scale. And so kindness at Ideas becomes a civic practice through advocacy rather than just a private feeling of someone. I move on now to a few other questions coming in. What is the process of integrating kindness into school culture, in the sense that, perhaps Dato, you can take this. What advice would you give to pre-service teachers on kindness in a classroom amidst the rigid co-curriculum and standardized testing?
Actually, kindness can be integrated in the activities of teaching and learning. You don't have to tell this is what kindness is all about, but by asking students to help one another, that's a form of kindness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, and also teachers should infuse such values across the curriculum, not just a particular subject, but where there are opportunities, activities that allow for the development of kindness, they must use that opportunity without actually telling them this is kindness. So I think that's how the whole school can be involved in such practicing such values. That's my response.
Well, we've talked at length about kindness or the teaching and incorporating kindness in education. But panelists, I want to have this question come at you as well. What is the one act of kindness that has changed your life? Perhaps go back to a time in your school, primary, secondary, even in university, perhaps, and recall on one of these situations in which kindness really changed your life. Professor, perhaps I can start with you.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Jessy. And I will answer the question, but I will also encourage everybody on this call, including the panel, to mentally note over the coming week, the next 7 days, how many times you receive kindness in your life, and compare that to the amount of times that you receive something that's the opposite. And you'll soon see that this is such a normal, routine part of our lives. It's everywhere. We experience it all the time. But as to your specific question, there's one moment that sticks out for me very strongly. I was 14 years old. I was in a lot of trouble at the time at school, experiencing all kinds of difficulties in my life. And there was a youth worker who came up to me and through his interaction in my neighborhood, gave me a video camera, tapped into my desire to want to make movies, worked with me, stuck with me during my sort of more temper tantrums and trying to kick against the system. And through that dedication, that understanding of my worldview, trying to work with me in a way that showed respect and was always trying to understand what the issues were I was facing, I've got to say that guy changed my life. And if I can just take a little bit of what he did for me and try to give that to the rest of the world in terms of the people I interact with, I'd hope to see similar changes.
And today you're the author of a book on kindness, the kindness.
And he's referenced in it. So there we go. That's my thank you to him.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Tunku, perhaps you would like to take this one in terms of what moment changed your life?
I was also 14. It was a school outdoor activities trip. And there was a ravine that the health and safety wasn't like it is now. And there was this ravine and we were all like doing this excursion. I got stuck. And the only guy who was around was this classmate who was actually notorious for being a bully. But I had no choice because I was stuck. So I reached out to him and said, hey mate, can you help me out here? And I was prepared for the worst.
He was the only person around.
He was the only person around. Yeah, I was prepared for the worst. I thought he would laugh at me and leave me there to sort of rot. But he came and he helped me. And he saved, well, maybe he saved my life, but he saved me from a rescue an hour later. And we had a discussion afterwards about it, again, when we were alone. And I think kindness was, I think what he realized was that he didn't need this bravado personality all the time, and that it was better for him to be kind. And of course, I expressed my gratitude to him for being kind. And on my side, I began to realize that the sometimes brash exterior of people is a temporary thing, and also maybe rooted in some other things which I don't understand, but can be transformed as well. And hopefully make both sides better people.
What a story. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Dato, I come to you. Which experience has changed your life with kindness in mind?
Quite hard to recall. I remember it was not really changing my, it changed my life, but something that I really appreciated. I was in this activity in that time. And then one of the things that we had to do was to climb mountains in order to rainy day, then go for abseiling. And I slipped, and there were leeches and you're not supposed to help, and you just this for you for survival. But the one man who's quite I don't know who he was. I mean, he was quite somebody, I think. But at that time, we were not allowed to use our ranks and all, and he had pulled me on this, and I felt so great, because otherwise, if he had left me there, God knows how long I was going to be stuck there. So so I think at that point, although he was not supposed to, you're supposed to be for your own survival, but he felt that I really needed the help, and he pulled me. So I thought that was, you think back, you can apply that in your real life. For example, I've seen people the elderly with a cane and getting their food, struggling to handle the cane and the food.
Right.
And sometimes nobody comes to help them. So, so I think people don't realize that for that person, he really needed help. So I think that's compassion and kindness, shows how important it is to someone. To other people, it may not be that important, but for that person, that's important.
A small gesture goes a long
Yeah.
way, that we can all sit here and recall on those moments. Professor, I come to you for some closing remarks at this point, through your observation, through your research, through the book, and of course through the role that you play on a daily basis as well at the university. How would you like to summarize today's salient points on kindness in education?
Thank you, Jessy, and thanks to everyone for your contributions and these great questions. I wish we had more time to get into them. But I think the big message for everyone, I guess I would summarize from what we've said, is that kindness and compassion starts with us. Whether you're working in a rigid, structured curriculum and you're struggling to find the time to be able to do these things, or you have a leadership position where you're responsible for guiding staff and students, there are things we can all do to embody compassion and kindness in our everyday practice. And if we all step up to that challenge, and if we all show that courage and determination to try and build a different narrative about who we are as humans, then we will begin to see some positive changes. And those changes start in our daily interactions. The more of those that happen, the more impact we will have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I come to our panelists here as well in the studio with us, Tunku and Dato. Being part of Ideas, how would you like to introduce Ideas International to our viewers today for a better understanding on the value-based teaching as well as the academic excellence that happens at Ideas?
Well, I think this whole session has been an introduction to Ideas, hopefully, that people viewing can see that we are sincere and earnest in trying to inculcate the values of kindness and compassion into everything that we do. The academic results, of course, speak for themselves. I think it's great that increasingly, the numbers, people who want to come, I think that we're doing, obviously, market forces say that we're doing something right. But, I think this session hopefully adds to the understanding of what we're trying to achieve here. And as you've said throughout, I think we are welcome to people coming to have a look at our great, new renovated facility. And if you're in Penang, we have one there as well. So please come.
Thank you.
When I tell people that I'm involved with Ideas and refugee children, they sort of, why? And I said, why not? And they're curious to know what we do. And I said, I tell them that, the school has tried to successfully, I think, to integrate the refugee children. And not only that, great success out of them, despite the fact that they have left, they probably missed school. They went through traumatic times, but they managed. So I think there's a lot that the school is doing that's good to just anyone, not just refugee. So I think, and I try to tell them, many are curious actually to know. And I also hope that they'll be able to sort of come and see the school for themselves.
Thank you very much. And that's a reminder that Ideas International does as well practice a balanced ratio between local-based students or Malaysian students as well as international students. We didn't touch much on sports, but the school is actively involved with sports and tournaments and so on and so forth. We do urge you to come to the campuses here in Kuala Lumpur and as well as up north in Penang for a visit. You could even spend a day in the school to experience what the school is like. And do visit the website at www.ideasinternational.org.my for all the information you need. And of course, everyone prefers WhatsApp these days, so just WhatsApp us and we'll definitely send you more information. We'd like to thank you, of course, our panelists and speakers. Thank you very much for weighing in today, but also all those who joined us from Malaysia and across the world, our distinguished panelists, our educators, our parents, and of course, the very curious minds of young students in the room as well. Tonight, in summary, I'd like to say that kindness is not just a soft skill. I think we've established that. It's not just a slogan. It's not just an extra value that we carry, but it's a strategic foundation to who we are personally and professionally as well. And it's one that we hope young people in the world will be able to adopt and practice more often as well. I leave you with this thought. Kindness is not how we soften education. It's how we strengthen the future. So once again, thank you for being part of this meaningful conversation. I wish you all a very good day ahead, and I hope that you walk out of this room feeling inspired, not just to teach, but to model and live kindness one interaction at a time. That's a close from all of us here at Ideas International, My Town campus in Kuala Lumpur. Professor, thank you for joining us all the way from Australia. We'll see you all next time. To visit the website, and of course, for more information, do contact us. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.